Fridays at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Want to talk about the final shot for some 49ers players versus the Chargers to make an impact. And the 49ers are going to be making decisions on the 53-man roster coming up on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That's the deadline for the 49ers to get in their 53-man roster. And of course, they've got a lot of decisions to make. And when you look at this roster, there's a lot of competition that's been happening through training camp, through these preseason games. And for some guys, it's become a lock. They are going to make this football team. Their play has been too good, too consistent, and they've just made too much happen. For other guys, they're sitting there on the bubble. There's an opportunity for them to make this team. And for some, maybe it's leaning in their direction. Maybe there's others that it's leaning the opposite way, right? You got a couple of guys leaning in, a couple of guys leaning out. But decisions are going to have to be made. And right now, there are several players that are sitting there with an opportunity. And of course, it's not what you just do in this game, but what you've been putting on film at practice and in the games that's going to determine. But if you've got two players that are completely neck and neck, where both of them have been performing in practice, both have had moments in the preseason that you've seen flashes of things you like, a game like this can possibly point it in one direction or the other. You show that last week you were good and this week you stayed consistent, that you've made the necessary adjustments that coaches have talked to you about in the meetings, and you're just getting better. It could promote upside. And so I think that this is a key matchup and a key game for a lot of 49ers. So what I want to do, I want to go through and talk about the players who are on the bubble. We'll talk about, hey, which players are in and which players are out. And I think that we can determine that there are some players that are going to be out. And we know which players probably are going to be in. And then there's some that are just on the bubble, on the fringe. It could go either way. And we're going to talk through it and see if we can determine who, for this 49ers versus Chargers game, is on the bubble and needs to have a good performance against the Chargers today. So this is going to be a fun episode. I actually planned on having it out on Friday, but then the Brian Robinson news and the trade came through. So I put my episode on focus on that, and I kind of put this one on the back burner, but I wanted it to come out because I think it's important so we can kind of highlight and watch these guys against the Chargers, because it's not always about winning, but it's about who's going to perform to make this team. We're trying to put together the best 53-man roster. And it's funny, I did all this work, and then the Brian Robinson thing changed, so I had to change a little bit of my notes when it came to the running back position, and that's okay. I like that happened. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating if you feel like I deserve it. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can bet on the 49ers to win the West. They're at plus 160 right now. Lots of NFL futures bets that you can go ahead and make as well. So if you're going to bet, use FanDuel, the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. But let's talk about this. And I want to start at linebacker. And I looked up and I was like, hey, who is going to be on the bubble at the linebacker position? First thing I wanted to determine was who's going to be in. And the players that are in for sure is, of course, Fred Warner. D. Winters, he's for sure in. That's not a question mark anymore. He's the starting will linebacker. Luke Gifford, who's looked very good at Sam linebacker, has also been very good on special teams. Gifford is a lock to make this team. I think Tatum Bethune has now proven through 2 preseason games in the training camp that he's had that he's a lock to make this 49ers roster at linebacker. And then number 5 is going to be Nick Martin, the rookie. No way you're giving up on a 3rd round rookie in it already, at this point in his career. But also, he's showed improvement from week 1 to week 2. And if you can continue that, you're staying there. Now, the 49ers have a decision to make if they're going to keep 5 or 6 linebackers. If they keep 5, you've got it figured out already. If they keep 6, which I believe is a real possibility because of the special teams potential for that sixth guy. And you've got some good players that are going to play special teams with Gifford, Bethune, and Martin. But you got a couple other guys who have been good in special teams in their career that are kind of up for that spot. So on the bubble at linebacker for the 49ers, I think it's Chaz Surratt. And Surratt looked really good last week when he came in the third and fourth quarter. I thought he looked good. He was the best tackling 49er according to PFF. He had 5 tackles. He just looked like he felt comfortable within this system. He was playing Mike linebacker. This guy can run. He can tackle. So this is a guy that can run you down. I thought that overall Chaz Surratt put himself in position to make this team. You throw in the fact that he played for Brant Boyer with the New York Jets. You've got that kind of chemistry, and I think Brant Boyer feels comfortable with Chaz Surratt. He had 10 tackles last year on special teams. So if you're looking for depth and you're looking for someone that can help you on special teams, I think Chaz Surratt has a real opportunity. So I have him on the bubble. Robert Saleh likes him. Brant Boyer likes him. I think that might help him make the roster. We'll see. Maybe he might be a guy the 49ers play roster gymnastics with. And of course, you've heard me talk about this a little bit, but Surratt is a vested veteran. So they might be able to say, hey, Chaz, we need to go ahead and release you. And then as soon as we get something done with our roster, we'll bring you back. He is a candidate for that. Now, the other bubble player at linebacker for me is Curtis Robinson. Robinson is kind of in the same boat as Surratt, a guy that the 49ers coaching staff is very fond of. They've developed him as an undrafted free agent out of Stanford. They've built him into the player that he has become. He's well liked around the locker room. I mean, the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. He last year would have probably started at linebacker if he wouldn't have suffered his injury during preseason. So that was unfortunate for Curtis Robinson. And we've seen him come back off the PUP list, a little bit into training camp, and he's sort of started to round into form. Not a lot of opportunities when it comes to defensive snaps for Curtis Robinson. There was, however, some opportunities on special teams, and he did pretty good with those opportunities. So Surratt and Curtis Robinson, interesting dynamic here. You got Johnny Hollins, who feels very comfortable, of course, with what you're going to get from Curtis Robinson. You've got Robert Saleh and Brant Boyer probably really enjoying what Chaz Surratt does. Both guys are hyper athletic. Both guys are big and fast and strong. I think it's an interesting battle between the two. Now, I don't know how it's going to go, but I think this game is going to determine, who goes where and how this thing plays out. I think there's going to be more opportunities to play because I don't expect D. Winters to play much. I think it's going to be everybody else. D. Winters might not play at all. So Gifford might play a little bit. Bethune, Martin, Surratt, and Robinson will probably get a lot of playing time. Now, I did not talk about a couple of guys because I do believe that they are out. That's Jalen Graham and Stone Blanton. I don't think that they've done enough to make this roster, and I think their snaps are kind of revealing that. They didn't really get a lot of opportunity last week against the Raiders, and I think they'll get more opportunity in this game. But we've seen the 49ers cut Jalen Graham in the past, and I don't think that he's improved enough on defense or special teams to be able to beat out the guys we talked about. 7 good linebackers ahead of him. And with Stone Blanton, it's not that Blanton's not a good player. It's that Blanton's not there yet. There's still a lot of development that needs to happen with Stone Blanton. I think he is potentially a guy that could end up on the practice squad. We'll see. We'll see if they go Jalen Graham or Stone Blanton on the practice squad. But it could be just the loser of the Chaz Surratt, Curtis Robinson, that ends up on the practice squad. Now, if Robinson or Surratt lose it, I'm sure there's teams around the league that could be interested in bringing him in. So Surratt, Robinson, I got them on the bubble to make this team as the 49ers' 6th linebacker. Now let's talk about defensive tackle. I have in right now, and how many defensive tackles are the 49ers going to keep? Are they going to keep 4? Are they going to keep 5? Are they going to keep 6? I think it's tough to keep 6. So you stick with me here. This is going to be interesting when we're talking about, who's in and who's out. So at defensive tackle in, I got Jordan Elliott. And I know there's a lot of conversation about Jordan Elliott potentially being traded. I don't think he's going to be traded. I think he's going to be the starting defensive tackle week 1 in Seattle next to Kalia Davis, who I also have as in and making this roster. So Jordan Elliott, Kalia Davis, CJ West, and Alfred Collins, I think they're all in the in category right now to make this team. That's 4 defensive tackles. Now, how many can you keep? 5, potentially. Kevin Givens is an IR guy, so he's probably going to end up on the IR. But I think you have a little bit of a logjam because you need to keep Jordan Elliott because he is a veteran that kind of understands how to play within this defense and has flashed a little bit. And so I think that Evan Anderson is on the bubble. And people might not want to hear that, but I think it has to be the case because they drafted 2 interior defensive linemen that play his position in this draft. They drafted Alfred Collins and CJ West, who are both 1 technique, 2 eye guys, and both of them are legitimately ahead of him because there's no way you're cutting a 2nd round pick or a 4th round pick. So I just don't know if Evan Anderson makes it because of the numbers. I do believe that last week was a bad performance against the Raiders. I don't think that's indicative of who the player Evan Anderson is, but I don't know if they have the roster size for him. And the reason is, if you keep 5 defensive tackles, Evan Anderson could be a shoo-in. But if you do that, if you keep Evan Anderson, you potentially miss out on keeping Sebastian Valdez. That's right. Sebastian Valdez and and Evan Anderson are likely not both on this team. I think going into training camp, there was a conversation that, Kalia Davis could potentially be on the outside looking in, but he's played so good through training camp in the preseason. I think he's elevated himself to be a starter. And so I think with Kevin Givens being out, Kalia Davis and Jordan Elliott are more locks than they ever were before. And I do an episode every year where I talk about locks before training camp, and I did not have Kalia Davis as a lock, but Jordan Elliott I did. And I think with CJ West and Alfred Collins, that's how it's going to be. So Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez are locked into a competition. And the question is Sebastian Valdez good enough right now to make the 49ers 53-man roster and be somebody that they count on? They know Evan Anderson was last year. He proved it. He played pretty well down the stretch. Now you get 0 pass rush upside from Evan Anderson. But what you get normally, not what he did last week against the Raiders, but normally a good run stopper. Can Valdez stop the run? Well, he did it in the week 1 game against Denver. Last week it was a little bit more erratic, not as good, not as consistent. Can he go back to form against the Chargers? If he can, and he showed enough in practice with Chris Kasarik, there's a chance that Valdez makes this roster and Evan Anderson ends up on another team. And that's difficult to say, but it's a realistic thing because you're not keeping 6 defensive tackles. And maybe they do. Maybe they do what I said with Surratt, and they only keep 5 linebackers. They keep 6 defensive linemen on the interior. I think that would be very interesting if they did that. So that's who I got right now. Anderson, Valdez, and I would love to know what you guys think about this competition at D tackle. And, I know a lot of people think it's going to be Jordan Elliott that's gone. I don't think that's going to happen. If it happened, it would raise some eyebrows because of who would start. But and never say never with the 49ers. But I believe Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez are currently on the bubble. Now, let's go over to defensive end. And with defensive end, we know we got Nick Bosa. He's for sure making this roster. Bryce Huff, 100% making it. Mikael Williams, 100% making it. And then I put Sam Okuwanu making it. I think with Yetur Gross-Matos starting the season on the PUP list, it secured Sam Okuwanu's place on the 49ers roster. Now, I've always thought the 49ers would keep 5, maybe 6 defensive ends because of how talented and how much some of them help on special teams. There's positions that definitely have more value with some of the new kickoff rules. Having big defensive ends that can move is important when it comes to blocking and tackling on kickoff and kickoff return. So Bosa, Huff, Mikael Williams, Sam O, a lot of times that's all you keep end-wise. I believe they're going to keep a 5th one, especially with Yetur Gross-Matos on the PUP list to start the season. Now, there's always a chance he doesn't go on the pup list or stay on the pup list. I think he's going to. I think they've got to be cautious with this knee. So who is on the bubble? Well, I think number one has got to be Robert Beal Jr., who just returned from injury. I don't know if he's going to play against the Chargers, but if he is healthy at all, enough to play against the Chargers, he needs to. I thought his Bronco tape was better than a lot of people thought. I thought the special teams portion was even better than that, and I thought he showed some upside. So I want to see if he can build upon that, generate a little bit of pressure, show that he can set the edge still in the run game, be more of a dual threat. I think that would help him. Now, if he doesn't play, I think it's more up in the air about Robert Beal Jr. making this roster. And the reason is I think there's one more bubble player at defensive end. And I would say this, Tevis Gibson. I think it's probably the most likely that he doesn't make this team, but he played really well against the Raiders. I think the 49ers are going to want to keep him around in some way, shape, or form. So does he make the 53? If Beal Jr. kind of lays an egg, maybe. I think it's the most likely they try to get Gibson to their practice squad. And so we'll see what happens with that. But I think he's in the mix. I put Robert Beal Jr. ahead of him, making this football team. They are comfortable with Robert Beal Jr. He's a guy they've invested in. They spent a lot of time and energy on. So I think Robert Beal Jr. is that guy. And then the guys that I have out are Garvin and Bradley King. I think that both of those guys are not going to end up making this roster. And so we'll see what happens. Allen as well. So, 49ers are definitely got some decisions to make along the defensive line. And that's where I kind of see it right now. Let's go to cornerback. So you got Debo. He's making this team. Renardo Green, Upton Stout, Dallas Flowers, and Chase Lucas. Now the 49ers have released Trey Brown. It appears very clear that those are the 5 top cornerbacks. Now, just like I talked about with linebacker, there is a possibility that the 49ers keep 6. If the 49ers keep 6 cornerbacks, it's interesting because I think there's 2 guys that are in the mix for that. Number one, Darrell Luter Jr. And are the 49ers ready to cut ties with a former 5th-round pick? I think that it's probably time. I think the play's been inconsistent. But, maybe he goes out there and he locks it down against the Chargers. And if he does, well, then that could definitely change some opinions on who he is. But I think he's a definite bubble player. And the reason is we just haven't seen it in any of the seasons. Now, this season is the most healthy that we've seen Darrell Luter Jr. So we got to give him credit for that. But I think the other player on the bubble is Jacob Robinson. I think in a perfect world, the 49ers waive Jacob Robinson and he ends up on their practice squad. But I think with some of the cornerback needy teams around the league, there's a chance that Jacob Robinson gets picked up. I think he's played really well. There hasn't been any highlight plays, no big-time pass defenses, but he really hasn't had opportunities, and the reason is he had pretty good coverage out there. A lot of times when the ball doesn't go your way, it just means you're in good coverage. So I think that he's in the mix for this. Darrell Luter Jr., Jacob Robinson, either one could be the 6th corner. I think the most likely scenario is neither one of these guys make the team. Darrell Luter Jr. and Jacob Robinson get waived, and the 49ers try to revert one or both of them to the practice squad. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think Robinson is the one they want the most on the practice squad. And then out, I have Fabian Moreau. He's just never done anything. They haven't played him. He hasn't played. He's been injured, yet they still have him on the roster. So I don't know what they're planning with Fabian Moreau, but I'm guessing that they make some sort of roster move with him before the 53-man roster, and I don't see him making this team with him not producing at all during the preseason. Now at safety, here's where it gets interesting. You have Jason Pinnock, he's in. You have Marcus Siegel, he's in. Then you have Jair Brown, and there are rumors that the 49ers are potentially shopping Jair Brown. Now, I don't know how good these rumors are, but there were rumors that the 49ers were interested in Brian Robinson. That happened. There was rumors they were looking for a wide receiver, and that happened. So I wouldn't say that it's clear that Jair Brown is on the trade block, but you can't rule it out either. And so I don't know exactly what's going to happen there. But for reasons I can't predict that there's going to be a trade, I'm going to put Jair Brown in the mix. He's still been working as becoming one of the starting safeties. So I think those three guys are in. Now, here's one of those convoluted positions where you have multiple guys that are on the bubble. Richie Grant is on the bubble, and I don't know if he's going to play. So this might be a foregone conclusion. The 49ers either really liked him before he got injured, and they're willing to keep him. He's going to be healthy in time for week 1. So, that is going to be the determining factor. I don't think he's going to play against the Chargers. So he's number 1 on the bubble. And it might just be that war of attrition gets the better of him, or it could be they liked him enough that he beat out everyone out. The other guy, Saron Neal. And Saron Neal's a guy that's played corner and played safety, which may give him extra value. You could keep him as one of the safety numbers, but also have him as a 6th cornerback. And when you talk about the things that Brant Boyer wants on his special teams, Saron Neal is one of the better special teams players that the 49ers added. And that was a big reason why they added him to this football team. So Saron Neal as a safety / cornerback could be a lot of value for the 49ers. I think he's on the bubble and in the mix, especially because of his special teams ability. Derek Canteen, and we heard Brant Boyer talk about Canteen and how much he liked him and the way that he goes about his business and his preparation and how hard he plays. And this is another guy who was a kind of a 2-position player in college. He played corner. In fact, he played outside corner, played inside corner at nickel, and he played safety in his different stops in college football. Now the 49ers have moved him to safety, and we've seen some good things from Derek Canteen, another young player like Jacob Robinson. Now, Canteen, I think, and Jacob Robinson are in the same category. 49ers like them. They would love to have those two guys on the practice squad so they can continue to develop them. So we'll see. We'll see if they can clear waivers and get there. I think it's Jacob Robinson has a better chance to get claimed than Canteen, but I've been wrong before, so we'll see what happens with that. Now, Jalen Mahoney is the next guy. I think the 49ers are still going to move on from Jalen Mahoney. They were willing to do it early on in training camp. He wasn't claimed. He has had some big plays, some good hits, some big tackles, an interception last week against the Raiders. I think he's done a lot to promote his stock and move up the boards a little bit, but I don't think it's enough to make this 49ers 53-man roster. Not when you have decisions on guys like Richie Grant or Saron Neal, either a guy who's got good special teams ability, who's been a good safety, not a great safety, but a good safety in the league, as far as depth-wise, and then Saron Neal, who adds so much special teams ability and had a pretty good game last week at cornerback. I think that's who it comes down to with it. And, of course, Malik Mustafa is going to be on the PUP list. Now, we're going to switch over to offense, and here's where it gets awesome. As quarterback, there is no bubble. Brock Purdy, it's Mac Jones. Nobody else is making this football team. Carter Bradley, maybe a chance to make the practice squad, and, that's pretty much it. I know they brought back Tanner Mordecai, but there's no bubble. Now, running back, there was a bubble. I was going to say that, hey, Keyshawn Vaughn, Jeff Wilson Jr., I think Jeff Wilson Jr. Is winning the competition, and that's where I was going to go. But now with the Brian Robinson trade, I think that there's a chance that Keyshawn Vaughn and both Jeff Wilson Jr. are just out. You got your guys now. You don't keep more than 5 running backs in your running back room, and that's already a lot. You got McCaffrey, you've got Brian Robinson, you've got Jordan James and Isaac Arendo. I just don't think you can keep anyone else. So I think it might be sayonara to Keyshawn Vaughn and Jeff Wilson Jr. And I thought Jeff Wilson Jr. did a pretty good job last week. So I think he would have earned a roster spot if it wasn't for the Brian Robinson trade. So no one on the bubble for me at running back. At tight end, you've got 2 guys in, George Kittle, Luke Farrell. And then you've got 2 guys on the bubble, Jake Tunges and Braden Willis. And both of them have a chance to make the team. Last year, Jake Tunges made the team. I think Tunges is a better player now than he was last season. But I ultimately don't believe that secures him 100% a job. I do think he's done enough to be ahead of Braden Willis and potentially earn that 3rd tight end spot. He's been a better receiver. He's improved his blocking. He showed his ability to play fullback, which he played some fullback with the Chicago Bears as well. So I think Jake Tunges is ahead. I think both of those guys are on the bubble, and who knows, maybe Braden Willis comes out and surprises everybody and changes the game. But there's also a chance that the bubble doesn't help either one of them. And because of roster reasons, they let both of those guys go on the waiver wire, expecting nobody to claim them because there's so many good tight ends out there. I think that's a real possibility. Then they can sign them back to the practice squad and elevate them if they need them. But I think there's a chance that both guys are not going to make this team. They have to go out there and prove that they are worthy to make it. So Tungus, Willis, I think, are on the bubble at the tight end position. Now let's go to offensive line, which has been a position that a lot of people have been talking about recently. And we know that the starters are in. So you've got Trent Williams. He's going to be your starting left tackle. You've got Ben Barch, who's going to be the starting left guard. And, you know, my guy Lou hit me up on Patreon asking me about Ben Barch, you know, and should they just give him the position? And I'm going to do a deeper dive and get this out for you, Lou, and do more of an episode on it because there's going to be plenty of time after this preseason game to kind of talk about it. But, you know, Barch hasn't really had to prove anything, right? He hasn't played in any of the preseason games. He proved, you know, a little bit maybe during the offseason, but now he's got the injured elbow. And I think it does open big conversation points about who starts at left guard. But I do think it's going to be Ben Barch, and he's going to have to prove it, right, in the games. He's going to have to go out there and show, and hopefully he does. Hopefully he shows what he showed a little bit last season in his small, limited amount of snaps. He was pretty good. And so if he can continue that, that's great. But I do think that there are question marks kind of surrounding Ben Barch. But Trent Williams, Ben Barch, they're starting. Jake Brendel, he's a lock, he's starting. Dominic Pooney, he's a lock, he's starting at right guard. Colton McKivitz, he's a lock, he's starting at right tackle. And then I do have Spencer Burford is now a lock. I think that there's no real competition now for Spencer Burford. Andre Dillard didn't work out. He got cut. Austin Pleasance hasn't been good enough to be a swing tackle candidate. Same with Isaiah Prince. They haven't proven it at all. And then you've got Spencer Burford, who not only played pretty good at tackle last week against the Raiders, but also has the position versatility to potentially move inside. Enough so that Kyle Shanahan said, yeah, if Dominic Pooney's not ready, Zakel, Connor Kobe, and Spencer Burford. And I think having Burford as a guy that started games at guard for you, it means that you have a little bit of confidence that he can go out there and at least give you competent offensive line play. And so he has played next to Colt McKivitz. There's a chemistry there. So I do believe that he's in the mix, and I have him in. So I have 6 offensive linemen in. Now, how many do the 49ers keep? I think the most logical is they keep 8 offensive linemen. Some people are saying they're going to keep 9. I don't think so. I think they're going to keep 8. I think with Burford's versatility, I think that's a big reason why. Then after that, I think they want to keep another guy with position versatility. And I messed up. There's 7 guys who are locks because Connor Kobe is a lock, and I forgot to put him on the list. I almost forgot that. So there's like 1 position open, and you want to have a guy with versatility. So number 1, I think it's going to be tough for Austin Pleasance to make this team or Isaiah Prince. I think it's likely that they cut one of them and put him on the practice squad. Pleasance has been around this league. He's been on practice squads. I think him or Isaiah Prince on the practice squad, you elevate them, you get elevations. In case of an emergency, you could always bring him in. But you also have all kinds of guys on your roster who have played offensive tackle, right, in their college careers, right? Ben Barch, one of those guys. Dominic Pooney has done it. Spencer Burford has done it, which he would be your first guy in. Nick Zakel has played tackle. So you have enough versatility. And then I think after that, your next guy needs to be another versatile player. The most versatile guys that you have remaining of the guys who are on the bubble is Nick Zakel and Matt Hennessy. And I think that that is the biggest competition in this game. And I know we want to talk about Drew Moss, and I like Drew Moss. I think Drew Moss is coming into the Derek Canteen. He's coming into, the Jacob Robinson conversation of a guy you really like, but they're not ready to go right now. And Drew Moss has got a lot of ability, and, a team might go pick him up. But I think the 49ers are going to look at this and say, you know what? We just don't have the roster positions for him, or we're going to lose people at other positions. So I do think Drew Moss is on the bubble. If he goes out and he improves, I will say that he's got a shot. I can't count him out. But I do believe that Nick Zakel and Matt Hennessy are ahead of him currently for making this football team. I think, like I said, Pleasance is a practice squad candidate. They could always end up keeping him at tackles, thinking they need 2 tackles, but I don't think they're going to do that. Drake Nugent, I don't think he's going to make this team. I think they've looked at him at guard. I think they still prefer Nick Zakelj. They still prefer Matt Hennessy, who are better when it comes to both positions combined. But I think that Nugent is a pretty good center. I just think he's another practice squad candidate for the 49ers. And then Isaiah Prince, I think the only way he ends up on the 49ers practice squad is if they can't get Austin Pleasance to be on their practice squad. So in Williams, Barch, Brendel, Pooney, McKivitz, Burford, Kobe, who I forgot to put. And then I think the bubble is Zakelj, Hennessy, Drew Moss. I think those are the top 3 guys in the bubble. Offensive line has probably got the biggest decisions to be made. There's always a chance they keep 9. I think it's going to be 8, and then they're going to see who they can get to the practice squad. And I think there's going to be some players around the league that are released that the 49ers might think about going out and getting as well. So we'll see how this roster ends up changing. Now let's talk about wide receiver. And we know that we're going to have Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, and Sky Moore. Those 3 are locks. Demarcus Robinson, he's going to be suspended, so he's going to be on the exempt list. Brandon Ayuk, he's going to start the season on PUP, so he's out. So that's 3 guys that are in. I did eliminate 3 guys from contention of making this football team. Tariq Owens. I don't think that Tariq Owens is developed enough to be able to be a contributor on the 49ers in 2025. I don't know if they're going to sign him to the practice squad. I think there's a chance he was on and off the 49ers practice squad last year. We'll see what happens with him. Malik Turner, they brought him in for a 3rd stint with the 49ers. And, we know what he can do. He's a guy that helps during training camp, but I don't think he has a real shot to make the 53-man roster. Same with Malik Knowles, who they just brought back because of injuries. I think he's out as well. So let's talk about who are on the bubble. I think number 1 on the bubble is Jacob Cowing. And I would have had Jacob Cowing as a lock if he wouldn't have gotten hurt again in the hamstring, not being able to go out there and prove what he can do. I also believe that the trade for Sky Moore may have weakened Jacob Cowing's spot on this football team, because part of the reason Jacob Cowing made a lot of sense for the 49ers was his ability to be a punt returner. He was very secure with the football as long as Darrell Luter Jr. wasn't running into him. He's a guy that could, get some yardage with some returns, nothing spectacular. But then also he had the ability to help in the offense because of the 4.3 speed. Now I don't know for sure because he might not have this game. I mean, he hasn't been at practice. The likelihood is he's not going to play against the Chargers. He doesn't have a game to prove it. So he's going to have to rely on what he was putting out there during OTAs, what he put out there in minicamp before training camp happened. Is that enough to show the 49ers team improve from last year? I don't know. I think he's on the bubble, and we'll see what the 49ers ultimately decide to do. Right now, they have room for him. I did not put in the in category yet, but I forgot. There's another guy I forgot. Another rookie, Jordan Watkins, is for sure in. So Pearsall, Jennings, Moore, Watkins, those 4 guys are for sure in. Jacob Cowing on the bubble. I think Junior Bergen is on the bubble, and the reason I kept him on the bubble and didn't put him out is because we know this is one of Brant Boyer's guys, and he really counts on him. So I think Bergen's going to stay in this, and I think where the Sky Moore thing really hurt Jacob Cowing, I think the Sky Moore thing hurts Bergen as well, but the Cowing injury kind of helps Bergen because you can kind of decide between the 2. Now, I do believe Cowing is the more impressive offensive threat than you get from Junior Bergen. I believe Junior Bergen's a better punt returner than Jacob Cowing. I don't think he's as secure with the catch, but he's definitely a better returner, not as fast, but his vision's a little bit better from what we've seen in just limited snaps and what I saw at training camp. So I'm keeping Bergen in the mix. I do believe that there is now a likelihood he's not making this team, but I want to give him the opportunity. Maybe he can have some big play happen and kind of change the minds of the 49ers. Now, the next 3 on the bubble are all veterans. Russell Gage, we know he's not going to play against the Chargers. John Lynch said he'd be ready to go week 1. I don't know if that is a sign of things to come that he's going to make this team, but you have 4 locks right now to make this team that are in. Pearsall, Jennings, Moore, Watkins. So if you keep 5 wide receivers, it can only be one of these 3 guys. Russell Gage, Robbie Chosen, or Isaiah Hodgins. Now, maybe you keep 6, but that's the most, which means you're keeping 2 of the 3. I do think that the 49ers may keep, Jacob Cowing as one of those guys, and maybe keep one of the veterans and then ask the other 2 veterans if they will come back after you release them and then move Jacob Cowing to the IR. I think that that's a possibility. And then you try to sign one of those veterans to the practice squad or both to the practice squad. Robbie Chosen said he regretted not signing with the 49ers practice squad last year because you get elevated and you get opportunities. Chris Conley did it a couple years ago. He got an opportunity to come up to the main roster and he made an impact. So I do believe that all 3 of those guys are in the mix for the 49ers to make their roster. So it's going to be fun to watch these bubble players compete. We still have competitions going down to the very end. And for some, they're not even going to be out there competing. But I think that there's some key ones to watch. I think, number 1, the Kalia Davis versus Sebastian Valdez may be one of the most interesting competitions that's going to happen in this game. And I don't want to see Kalia Davis go. I don't want to see him waived. I think he's got a lot to add to this football team. But what about the upside of Sebastian Valdez? Is he a Jacob Robinson, one of those guys you can waive and potentially get back? I don't think so. I think whoever the 49ers potentially waive of Sebastian Valdez and Evan Anderson end up on another roster. So I don't know how they're going to go about keeping both of those guys, because can you keep 6 interior defensive linemen, Jordan Elliott, Kalia Davis, who are your presumed starters, CJ West, Alfred Collins, who that's your 2nd and 4th round pick respectively, who have a lot of upside, and then you get down to the 5th and 6th guy, Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez. I think it's going to be crazy. Maybe you have a roster spot here and there that you can keep open, by only keeping 5 corners. Maybe you keep 5 linebackers, and you kind of have one of those other guys, Surratt or Curtis Robinson, come off your practice squad. I just don't know how they figure this thing out. Maybe Robert Beal Jr. doesn't make it, and you only go 4 defensive ends, and then eventually you sign Gibson or Beal Jr. to your practice squad, which Robert Beal Jr. could probably make it to the practice squad. I think that's within reason, especially if he doesn't put up a great performance in this game versus the Chargers. So nothing is decided yet. There's a lot of bubble players competing for positions. I think it's a little bit unique for the 49ers, where normally it's, you got guys competing for about 11 spots, and that's depth reasons. But in this one, you're going to have a lot of competition. I'm excited for it. It makes the game a little bit funner to watch. 49ers versus Chargers is a final shot for some of the 49ers roster hopefuls that are on the bubble, and I'm excited to see it. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the bubble players, who's going to make it, who's not. Curious. And if you disagree with me about Evan Anderson, being on the bubble, that's okay. I just want to know who's not making it, because I think that it's interesting. And if they keep 6 defensive linemen, and you think they're going to keep 6, I'm all for that too. I have no problem keeping a lot of big guys. I just don't know how the roster makeup works after that. But it's all building towards the final 53-man roster on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating if you feel like I deserve it. This episode was brought to you by FanDuel. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.